Beneath this group, this 13 families, is the Committee of 300. The Committee of 300 is the next layer in this pyramid of control. And guess where you all are? At the bottom layer. And isn't it interesting that on the US dollar is a pyramid with an eye watching everything that's underneath the pyramid? Now how do they explain that Egyptian Sumerian symbol on a US dollar? Do they explain it when you're in school? No. Do they say why there is an eye watching everything? No. What does the eye represent? The eye represents, if you remember, Osiris, the all-seeing eye, which goes back to the reptilian sun god of Nimrod. And it is a sun god because reptilians worship sun, and one of their symbols is a blazing sun. And you've seen them all over the place. Okay, sometimes they look like flames coming out of the sun, but in fact it's in the center of the Argentinian flag, which where the winged reptilians are. They're all over the place if you keep your eyes open. Now, in addition to this symbol being on the US dollar, those of you who have a dollar left in your wallet, if you look underneath where it used to say e pluribus unum, it now says novus ordem seclorum, which means New World Order. That's on your money. Okay, so it's already part of your money. And in addition, there's a globalization or unification of all the currencies of the earth, especially in Europe, where they use now the euro dollar, which the Europeans didn't like the word dollar in their currency, so now they just call it the euro. And if you look at the exchange rate, it's basically 1 for 1. US dollar will get you a euro. In South America, Ecuador has adopted the US dollar as its national currency. So has Costa Rica. Most of those people never saw a dollar in their life, but it's their national currency. And if you go to Argentina, the peso is 1 to 1 with the dollar. So Ronald Reagan and George Bush got their wish when they said that they wanted from Alaska to Argentina one economic unit. It exists right now. Europe, same thing. There is a United States of Europe. You can drive across any border without the use of a passport or even stopping. They'll stop you if they want to, but you don't have to stop. You don't need a passport. When you land at an airport in Europe, there is 2 lines, one for European market members and everybody else. And in Switzerland, there's even a line if you have a US or Canadian passport, there's a separate line for you. So there's all of this going on all over the earth, and if you travel a lot, you get to see all of this. Now, may I erase this part also? By the way, if you're interested in some of the names of this Committee of 300, I'll just give you a sample. One of the names, which you may not recognize, is called Agnelli. Agnelli, and they own the Fiat Corporation. And they tell the Italian government what to do. There is also the Spencers, Carringtons, Norman, Ford, Tafts, Roosevelt, Russell, Stewart spelled both ways with a U and an EW, Seaton, Hamilton, Campbell, Bush, Douglas, Montgomery, Balliol, Graham, Lindsay, Cameron, Wilson, Morgan, Harriman, Carnegie, Mellon, Oppenheimer, Rhodes, Hines, Savoy, Schiff, Kuhn, Loeb, Coolidge, and Delano. These are just samples of the Committee of 300 surnames that are being used. And I'll erase this now so I can give you some more information. Now, as I mentioned before the break, when these shape-shifting people do their ceremony, it always involves the use of human blood and hormones, because when you are trying to maintain a particular form, you need to intake the genetics of that form to maintain the integrity of it. Otherwise, you regress to your original form, which in their case would be reptilian. And you've heard the old stories, and there's even been movies and comedy made out of it, where there are these wealthy families in Europe, or even royalty, who have this family member that's locked away in a dungeon or in a tower because he's very strange. And whenever the people who are guests in the castle or the building go to look, they find this gigantic reptilian-like creature living locked away. It's because he reverted back to the original form and did not shapeshift any longer. He got stuck in the reptilian form. And as it's turning out, as the centuries are going by and the interbreeding and the intermarriage continues, they're finding it more and more difficult to maintain a human form. And so they're doing more and more ceremony on what is called the morphogenetic grid. And I know many of you have heard of this before. The Earth is very much like a body. Just like you have a chakra system and you have the meridians that come out of the chakra system, the Earth has energy centers and ley lines that come out of the energy centers and crisscross like a grid or a matrix. And on certain places where they intersect, there is a powerful energy vortex created. And that grid or that matrix of energy around the Earth is called the morphogenetic grid. And the reason the word genetic is in it is because it resonates to the occupants of the planet, so that there's a connection between the energy of the Earth and the energy of the humans or creatures that live on it, creating an interlocking unit called morphogenetic grid. If you're a chiropractor or an acupuncturist or acupressure, and you press a certain point of the body, you are actually affecting other parts of the body that are connected to that pressure point. Same on the Earth. If you perform a ceremony or create an energy pressure point at a specific part of the Earth's morphogenetic grid, you will then affect all the other parts of the Earth that you want to connect with. They perform their ritual and ceremony on such locations. For example, the pyramids of Egypt are located on a very big center point on the morphogenetic grid. Montauk is located at the edge of a morphogenetic grid. This point here in Montauk, Long Island, connects to Land's End in England. There's a direct connection. And when Aleister Crowley did his sexual magical rituals in Land's End, it connected directly to Montauk Point. Montauk Point is also part of the old Atlantean civilization. And it is in fact the top of a mountain chain that connects all the way down to the Caribbean Ocean. And the Montauk Indians' leader, they called a pharaoh. In fact, the name of the Montauk princess, her last name is Pharaoh. And, of course, that is related to the kings in Egypt, which then fall back to their common ancestor in the Atlantean time period. And in fact, up until the early part of this century, you could see the tops of pyramids along the beaches in Montauk Point, which have subsequently been covered up. In fact, the town of Montauk is located directly over a gigantic underground pyramid, which the government was very interested in accessing because of the technology that is inside of it. Basically, the control group, the Illuminati, is interested in mind controlling the entire population. Because let's face it, there's only a few thousand of them, and there's 6 billion of all of you. There's just not enough armies in the world that can control that size of a population. So the best way to do it is through mind control, and that's where the Montauk Project came into being, because it enabled them to test and develop specific mind control devices and techniques that were able to be put out into the public. And that's one of the things I was involved in at the time. When they do their rituals, it's on specific dates that mean something to them. Generally, it coincides with the full moon. One of their greatest holidays occurs on what you would call Halloween. That is a very important date for the reptilians. And that's where Halloween got the reputation of having ghosts and goblins and weird things happening, because that was a ceremony that they performed every October 31st. And recently, if you can recall, what incident occurred on Halloween that involved the deaths of a couple of hundred people in an instant? Egypt Air 990. Okay. That was part of a ritual ceremony slaughter. And where did it happen? Not far from Montauk Point. Okay, on this line. What else happened along that line that continues out like this? Well, let's map it. Here we had Egypt Air 990. Here we had, this is Long Island. Here we had TWA 800. Here we had Swiss Air 101. Gee, that looks kind of suspicious to me. Oh wait, there's something else. Right over here. Someone just said it. Why him? Well, let's look at one of the Illuminati members who's trying to work her way up the ladder, who's very high up the ladder, and you know her as Hillary Clinton. Okay? Now, Hillary Clinton never lived in New York State a day of her life, but she decided that it was in her best interest to become a state senator, so she moved to Westchester, New York, and the next day started to run for senator. But she had some competition. She had JFK Jr., who, if he ran for God, people would vote for him in New York. She also had Mayor Giuliani, who, by the way, the local people lovingly referred to as Giulianazzi, because he's very strict and tough with a lot of things. Now, what is she going to do? Okay, people love Junior, and Giuliani's really tough, and New York is now, you know, crime-free practically and cleaned up. What's she going to do? She just got there. So, what you do what any self-respecting Illuminati person would do, and then to kill your opponents. Okay, so she had JFK plane rigged with a bomb, and that worked very well. He took off from an airport here in central New Jersey. His flight plan, here's Martha's Vineyard, here's Connecticut, Rhode Island, there's New York City. This is there's water over here, here's Connecticut. His flight plan took him right across the coast, right here, and then he was going to go right across here to Martha's Vineyard. That's the standard flight plan from where he was. But something happened over here, just around the part where TWA crashed. It spooked him, and he cut across the island and then went east and went down over there. He was only 10 miles from the airport. Okay? Now, it took them, this is JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, Islip, Boston. This whole area is like radar central for the Earth. Okay? It took them 8 days to find a plane that was constantly monitored by radar. It took them 8 days to find a plane that was in this little area of the ocean, surrounded by islands and land that was not very deep water at all. The Kennedys never said a word about it. In fact, Caroline Kennedy, who lives on Long Island, didn't even go up there. She's the last one left. I would advise her not to leave her home. Okay? And so what happened was they finally found wreckage, okay? And then they brought the bodies up, autopsied them, burned them, and then put them back where they found them within 24 hours. Okay? Kennedys never said anything. You would think they would have a funeral, even if it was closed casket, right? Nothing. Burn them, put them back down. And then the coroner who autopsied 3 bodies in a matter of hours and came up with the idea that they died from impact trauma. Well, if they died from impact trauma, how come there was no debris? If the plane hit the water and then sank, why did only the inside of the plane show up and nothing from the outside of the plane? Okay, why were there suitcases that were inside the plane washing ashore when all the outside of the plane never appeared anywhere? And that's because the plane blew up in midair. And they knew where it was all along. So they got rid of him. So now she only had to worry about Giuliani. So lo and behold, he suddenly develops prostate cancer. And he can't run. Okay? So they got rid of Giuliani. They got rid of JFK Jr. And they have this guy that no one ever heard of before replacing Giuliani, running against her, who's obviously going to lose. In fact, he's so inept that while he walked in the streets doing his campaigning, he literally fell on his face on camera, and they had to pick him up. That he can't even walk straight. No, he just can't walk. So that's who they have running against Hillary Clinton. Okay, she's not worried in the least bit. Okay. And the same thing with the presidential campaign. They have Al Gore, who can't even hold his reptilian form anymore. I mean, he just looks like a reptile even when he's human, right? And he has the personality of a lizard as well. And then you have Bush, whose father was the first inner circle person from behind the scenes to get into public office, whose grandfather, Prescott Bush, financed the Nazis in the 1930s and developed the Nazi empire. Prescott Bush's friends, Helen and George Barton, and their friend Hector Echeverria, in 1933, created the Internal Revenue Service out of New York City. And first they went to Delaware and incorporated it, and it is a privately held corporation by those 3 people and their descendants, which is, by the way, best friends with Prescott. Which is also a privately held corporation. So your You understand? Yes.
Do you have the list of who the owners of the Federal Reserve are?
I have them, but not with me, because it's a very long list, and they're individually owned in various parts of the country. Okay? Now, here's another thing. The post office is owned by the Bank of England, which in turn is owned by the Windsor family. Now, in the year 1213, the British royal family signed a mandate saying that anything from that point onward ever owned by the royal family of Britain or England is to be transferred to the Vatican. The Vatican will be the name on record as being the owner, but the royal family will be the executor of the assets. And it gets better, because this country, back in the 1600s, was called the Virginia Tobacco Company, owned by the British royal family, which then transferred ownership to the Vatican. So you don't live in a country, you are employees of a corporation. And that is why, if you are subject to the board of directors, and if one of those board of directors owns another corporation and asks you to pay money to that corporation and you sign a contract doing that, then you're indebted to that corporation. And that's what the IRS is. So as soon as you send in a tax return and you sign it, there is a statement there that says you now owe it from that point onward. You've just written a contract and signed it. Okay? You are not citizens of any country. You are citizens or employees of a corporation, which to this day is in existence. That's why the board of directors believes they can do whatever they want to you, because they own you. And unbeknownst to you, in the 60s and 70s, actually from President Carter onward, executive orders have been signed stating that the Constitution and all the rights of all U.S. citizens are to be abolished upon executive order. As soon as they put that in effect, you no longer have any rights. And they signed it over to the United Nations. You can look at the documents. They're on file on the internet. Not even keeping it a secret from you. All they have to do is declare a national emergency. But hold on a second. They did that in World War II to collect taxes for the war effort. That was never rescinded. So theoretically, this country is still under a state of national emergency, and they can do whatever they want. If they come to your house and say, Janet, there's a state of emergency, we're taking your house, nothing you can do about it. You have no rights. None. And so then if you have the bright idea of, let's defend ourselves, we have the right to bear arms, well, that's an easy problem to solve, because all you have to do then is create a situation where children are getting killed in schools, and then everyone wants you to take your arms away, the weapons. And New York City and Los Angeles are paying $50 for every weapon turned in, no questions asked. License or unlicensed. We'll take it. $50. Okay? Unarm the nation. Can't defend yourself. And it gets even better than that. Remember I told you that the reptilians, the original ones, went underground. Those original ones in the true 100% form are still there. But now they're coming to the surface. If you remember, back a couple of years ago, I think it was 96, the Hale-Bopp comet, and there was a big rumor that said there was actually some big, large object trailing behind it. And at the same time, they came up with this cult figure in San Diego who killed themselves and all the members so that they can fly away to this object behind Hale-Bopp and live an extraordinary life, making anyone who believes in that object look foolish. That cult in San Diego was set up years and years ago. There's actually a movie made about it called He and She. I don't know if any of you have seen that movie. You can go and look it up in the video store. And it's a story about this man who killed himself, Appleby, and his wife who passed on since then, who went around the country claiming to be extraterrestrials, having people give them all of their assets and follow them to West Virginia, where a UFO was going to come and take them off the planet. Of course, somewhere along the line, people lost track of them, and they just vanished into thin air until they reappeared in San Diego. Now, this guy was a CIA operative, and they knew all along what they were planning to do. And most likely, he didn't kill himself, but he was killed. And then probably all the others were killed as well. Now, isn't it strange that in San Diego County, the coroner from Los Angeles had to go and take the bodies from 90 miles away? Why? Oh, he happens to be the same coroner who took Marilyn Monroe's body out of her house a couple years ago when she was murdered also, because she was having an affair, as you know, with both Kennedy brothers. And the night before her death, she got on the phone, and this is on a tape recording. She said, I'm going to blow all of this sky high. I'm going on a news program tomorrow, and I'm going to tell them all what you've done. She had his notebook. And in the notebook was information about the reptilians and what they really were. And she was going to go on a news broadcast and tell them all what happened. And so, in the middle of the night, an ambulance came to her house, drugged her, took her for a drive, brought her body back, and put it in the bedroom for the maid to find. This was witnessed by a neighbor. She was murdered. Now, here's the interesting juxtaposition of all of this. What song was written about her? Okay, Elton John wrote that. What did he use that song for later on? Another murder. Okay, only she was murdered at a place called In French, the bridge of the soul, Pont de l'Âme, which in ancient times was a sacrificial location to the goddess Diana. Is that a coincidence? Why was she killed? First of all, she was chosen from birth to be a sacrificial queen. In the lines of Semiramis, she was the symbolic Semiramis for the reptilian religion. Her only purpose in life was to create an heir for the throne because she had more human genetics that could be blended then with the reptilian genetics of the Windsor family to get a 50-50 split because their ratio was deteriorating. She, before she married Prince Charles, was taken to a ceremony where she witnessed them shape-shifting. And when she came back to her apartment, she was throwing up from being sick of seeing the sights of them actually slaughtering babies and drinking their blood. These people actually have women kept in cages. Just sole purpose in life is to give birth and have the baby sacrificed. To reptilians, babies are a delicacy. They have the strongest genetics and the strongest hormones. And especially small children who are brought to the point of severe fear and murdered at that point, that is the highest energetic output that they can possibly capture. And that's what they do. And drink the blood. This is part of their ceremony. This is the sacrifice. Now, Diana was pregnant, and they used the fetus in a ceremony after they killed her. The car she was riding in was not her regular car. It was a car that had been rebuilt and sent from Germany to get her in Paris. The driver was not drunk. If any of you had seen the video taken at the hotel before they left, did he look drunk to you? If he was anywhere near drunk as they claimed him to be, he'd be falling on his face. Do you think she would have gotten in a car with a driver who was that drunk? No. And why did it take over 2 hours for them to bring her body from the accident scene to a hospital that was only 20 minutes away? Why? What were they doing to her body? And why then is she enshrined in a tomb on an island on her ancestral land? I'm going to tell you why. Because the New World Order has in its plans to create a new global religion. And that global religion will have Diana as an icon. And in the next 6 to 12 months, you will see people claiming to see her vision appear to them, talking about the New World Global Order to come. And this is part of a project that the Illuminati have along with the New World Order. Bless you again, whoever that is. It's called the Blue Beam Project. Blue Beam Project is designed to holographically project the image of religious figures to various parts of the world, like they're doing in Medjugorje, like they did in Fatima. That's for the secrets they're not releasing, but the Vatican has stored up. Okay. And it's in operation right now. They've been testing it. For example, on a window of a bank in Tampa, Florida, after a rainstorm, the face of Jesus appeared. And every morning to this very day, groups of people come and pray at a bank window. Oh. Now, what statement is that making? Okay? And so, someone mentioned or asked me before about the Shroud of Turin. I'm going to talk about the Shroud of Turin also. Whether you realize it or not, cloning has been around for quite a number of years. In fact, the Germans, in this century, perfected it in 1927 and have been manufacturing little Aryan soldiers since that time. The United States perfected it at MIT in 1967 when they manufactured the first cloned human being. Only in the last few years have they let you know that cloning is successful by showing you sheep and a dog and this animal and that animal. Because if you'll accept that, now in the newspaper they're talking about cloning babies. And then they're starting to talk about removing birth defects and genetic anomalies. So does that mean in the future, if you have a family history of a certain type of birth defect or anomaly, are you not allowed to have children? Will they regulate who has children and not, like they do in China? That's happening right now. And so the Blue Beam Project has as its final coup a cloned Jesus, taken from the blood samples from the Shroud of Turin, which is not a fake or a hoax, but a real object. Now, for years it was on display in Turin. And then scientists came in and they carbon dated it and they said, no, it's a fake from the Middle Ages. Now, as far as I know, no one in the Middle Ages was able to create a negative image, like a photographic negative image, as far as I know. And so people started not going to the Shroud of Turin until someone came up with the idea of, hey, wait a minute, they couldn't have done that in the Middle Ages. Let's look at that again. Well, suddenly there's a fire in the church, and the church burns to the ground, and the shroud disappears, and nobody knows where it is. Until about 4 months ago, when Israeli scientists said, we have a piece of the shroud, and we tested it, and we found pollen that could have only come from the Middle East 2,000 years ago. So it's not a fake. That's Israeli scientists who have no interest, supposedly, in Christianity. And so now they have proof, genetically, that this is a 2,000-year-old item from the Middle East with blood samples on it. I'm going to tell you that years ago in Montauk, when I was working at Montauk, we already knew that they had cloned a body from the blood samples on the Shroud of Turin, and that this cloned body will be presented as a new Jesus coming as the second coming. And what will people say? The year 2001, 2002, prove he's Jesus. Let's take a DNA sample. Isn't that the buzz thing now? But everything's a DNA sample. So when they take his DNA sample, it will match with Shroud of Turin. It's him. Only this one will be a programmed clone that will say that the New World Order is his new holy empire. He will be the new Nimrod, who will be Semiramis. Diana. That's the New World Order religion for the future that you will all be forced to believe in. In addition, there are 5 concentration camps built now in the US and Canada, each one able to hold 5 million people. There are also 270,000 railroad cars being built in Oregon to hold dissidents and carry them to these concentration camps. Each car able to hold 40 dissidents chained to the wall. The government, U.S. Accounting Office, also requisitioned last year 200 million body bags. I don't know what for, do you? Yeah, but it's a pretty odd number to ask for. That's 2/3 the population of the United States. In addition, they have plans to invade this country. That's what some of the fires are about in the West. The reptilians are coming to the surface, the original ones, because the object behind Hale-Bopp is behind the dark side of the moon, and it is causing weather anomalies on the Earth and gravitational pull. That's why the volcanoes are going off. That's why there's earthquakes occurring in the Pacific Rim and elsewhere. And that's why many physicians who I work with are reporting to me that many women are having 2 menstrual cycles per month. This is becoming more and more common. And you're going to see that happening as this object gets closer and closer and closer. It is filled with pure 100% reptilians from the Draconis star system who are planning their invasion. And this is scaring the hybrids left behind on the Earth who did not accomplish what they were supposed to accomplish hundreds of thousands of years ago. And now mommy and daddy are back, and they're not happy with the way the children left their room. So they're very scared. And so now there is, in effect, a plan by pro-human groups to eliminate the genetics of the reptilians as they come to the surface. And they're doing this with the contrails. They're spraying a mixture, which Doc was kind enough to give me a map of where they're concentrating the spraying. The dark spots are where the sprays are concentrated, designed to lock up reptilian DNA and activate human DNA. Those out there who have a high percentage of reptilian DNA will get sick and die, and they are getting sick and dying. And those with human DNA may get sick, but will develop an immunity, hopefully, and survive. Now, up until last year, this was only being sprayed in English-speaking countries. Only last year did I find out that Germany has now been added. So even the pro-human groups are racist. Don't think for 1 second that if the pro-human groups win, that things will be wonderful. It will just be a different tyrant. Instead of being a reptilian, it will be a human tyrant. But the agenda is the same.
So who's behind this brand?
This is behind pro-human factors within the New World Order. I'll pass this around. Give it. It belongs to Doc, though. So give that back to him. Sorry?
The pro-human is the New World
No, pro-human is reptilian, the hybrids. But amongst that pyramid of control are human groups that under their control. And there are human factors or breakaway units that seek to eliminate the purebred reptilians as they come to the surface. The purebred reptilians and whoever would support them. Yes?
It's interesting that this has come up because I was just commenting to myself, this is, I think, maybe the beginning of the week. I haven't seen any contrails around here for about a month. And before, they were just almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
They're often
Are they? Not as often as it was? Yeah, I haven't noticed any of that.
Now listen to what will happen. The reptilians are coming through openings in the cave system throughout the world. Most of the national cave systems are being closed down for various reasons. Last Thanksgiving when I was in the Ozarks in Missouri, and I went to see one of their big caves, one of the largest in the country, it was closed due to electrical systems. As far as I know, there are no electrical systems in these caves, but it was the reason they used that it was closed down. Is to prevent people from seeing what's coming up. And all of the fires that are happening in the western United States are covering up openings, especially in Montana and Idaho and those areas, and New Mexico, where the reptilians are coming to the surface, and they want to keep people away. That's one of the reasons they raise the gas prices so high, so people won't travel so much, and they'll be off the road. But it gets better than that, because they will plan for civil disruptions across the United States after they crash the stock market. They will have people going berserk, rioting, looting, chaos. They will tell you that the civil defenses, military, cannot handle the situation because it's too widespread. And so the President of the United States, who at that time will be George Bush, will ask the UN to bring their troops into the United States and patrol the streets and give back civil order. You already have a foreign troop occupying this country now. They've already brought in Canadian troops into the northwestern United States. I will also tell you that in southeastern Canada, they have German troops and German Air Force planes on the ground waiting for their orders. I personally know people in Canada who have now been assigned to the Air Force bases in northern Ontario and Quebec with German forces. In the Pacific Northwest and in Alaska, they have stationed now Chinese and Russian troops and Air Force. When the civil disobedience becomes out of hand, these forces will invade the United States. It will happen very soon. When they finally occupy the country, which, by the way, they will declare a national emergency officially, and you will have no rights. They will declare that the United States is too large of an area to be controlled from a central location, and so they will defer to the United Nations, who will break the United States into two halves along the Mississippi River. Atlanta will become the capital of the Eastern District, and Denver will become the capital of the Western District. That is why Atlanta and Denver have identical, gigantic airports, and that is why Atlanta and Denver have replicated all governmental agencies from Washington, which have now relocated to both of those cities. Have any of you been to the Denver airport, the new Denver airport? At baggage claim 17, you will see a gigantic mural of a black woman, a Hispanic woman, Jewish woman, an Oriental woman, and an Indian woman lying in coffin holding dead babies.
Oh, no.
Oh yes, I have pictures of it. You can go see it yourself. And standing above them with a torch and a sword is a little blonde Aryan boy. And on the floor of the Denver airport, embedded in the tiles as you get off, are little reptiles all over the floor. And in the stained glass windows are swastikas and the fleur-de-lis. So it's in front of your face, right in front of you. I don't even believe what I'm telling you. Go look for yourself.
And the structure itself?
Yeah.
With the
Yep.
hidden...
And I have the photographs, which I left at home, but I have them. And outside the airport, on a big plaque, it says, dedicated to the people of Denver by the New World Airport Organization. And underneath Denver Airport, and some subterranean cavern that they built, contractors built something with enough concrete to build a 6-lane highway between Denver and Chicago. That's how much is built underneath the airport, which, by the way, has been built an hour away from Denver. And when you drive into the airport, there are cameras that monitor your license plate no matter where you're from. And when you leave, they monitor again. So whoever goes in, they know who comes out. And if there's anything blocking your license plate, they will stop you and make you clear it off so they can monitor it.
What's the underground thing?
The underground is a gigantic holding pen with entrances and subterranean caverns that crisscross North America. And it's built directly over what the government refers to as a reptilian nest. These are nests where there are large pockets of reptilian cultures living there. One of the largest areas extends from Monmouth area of California around Mount Shasta, all the way down to the Mojave, 29 Palms area, and then east to Arizona and what is commonly known as Area 51 in Nevada. That is one of the largest underground reptilian areas. So this room, everyone's pretty quiet.
Yeah.
But like I said, you're going to see, and you're seeing it now in the news, and from now on, all of these things happening. And how do you want proof that George Bush is going to win the election? All you have to do is look at who Al Gore picked for a running mate. Nobody's going to vote for him. Nobody. At least not in the Midwest or the South or the Northwest. He guaranteed his loss, but that's what they were supposed to do. But even if you did go and vote, if everybody in the country secretly joined forces and voted for him, he'd still lose because it's all electronic voting and it means nothing. You might as well press the lever on your toilet bowl to vote because it probably would have more value than going to an election booth. Yes, you have a question.
No, I have heard that voting machines, are set up and you vote for both days, letter, you get your vote.
Well, it's whoever they want to win. Months or weeks, years before any election, they know who's going to win. It's already rigged. Yes.
And the other thing I heard is the time span for this to come about before the United Nations people be
Yeah, there definitely will be before 2003. And the way it looks now, I heard some information that said the stock market crash may be before the end of the summer, or any time between there and spring, but maybe before the end of the summer. And then you'll start to see the civil disturbances begin, which isn't that far away. Okay. But certainly, this country, as you know it, will no longer exist. But what you should also know is that it never really existed in the first place. It was never a country. It was a corporation. And just like Switzerland, it was never a country. Switzerland is a Vatican-created artificial device for financial holdings. That's why they have no army. That's why they're the only ones allowed to defend the Vatican. Oh yes, you asked me yesterday at the library, at the bookstore. Yugoslavia and the breakup of that country, which by the way, Yugoslavia is an artificially created country. There was no such thing as Yugoslavia before World War I. Okay? It was a punishment of Serbia for killing Emperor Franz Josef of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And as you know, that area of Serbia, Croatia, Macedonia, all those little tiny countries were the only place in Europe that had Muslim population, other than the main part of Turkey. But as far as the main part of Europe, there was all Christian except for that little part of Yugoslavia. That is unacceptable to the Illuminati. Their goal is to eliminate Muslim fundamentalists from the face of the earth. And that's what they're in the process of doing right now. That's why the so-called peace talks failed between the Israelis and the Palestinians, which, by the way, Israel is also an artificially created country, okay? Which, if you know the true history of Judaism and the Hebrew people, they were a conglomeration of tribes from the Middle Eastern areas that had no genetic unification at all. And that the original religion was the result of the Hittite people and other groups who did sacrificial ritual slayings that are even mentioned in the Bible. The mere fact that God called upon Abraham to kill his own son, that's a ritualistic slaying. And he was going to do it because it was commonly accepted. That is why on the Israeli soldiers' uniforms, on the patch is a snake. Any of you who watched Rabin's funeral saw that the family was guarded by a special unit with black patches and a snake going up their arm. Because they're the only group that won't go along with the program. And the irony of the whole thing is that they were created by the Illuminati in the first place. They kind of went insane. Just like the United States. The United States was a creation of the Illuminati in the first place, but got too big for its britches, and now they have to take it down a peg or two. They have to make the United States into a typical third world country like everybody else. And that's what they're going to do. And so they're creating a situation in the Middle East with the Chinese on one side and the Israelis on the other side, destroying everything in the middle. And just 6 months ago, the Israelis signed an arms deal with the Chinese, giving them nuclear capabilities in missiles that can travel over 3,000 miles. And what's not known in general to the United Nations or to the United States, who's only in the newspaper once, most people don't know that Western China is not Oriental. The indigenous population of Xinjiang province in the West is Persian, and they're Muslim. And they're rebelling against the Chinese and blowing up their buses and their stores, and any Chinese national that lives in this area is under attack. So the Chinese are moving troops into Western China to put down the rebellion. This is upsetting the people in Kazakhstan and Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan and all the little stands that used to be part of the Soviet Republic that also happen to have all the nuclear missiles that are left over, and they're giving arms and weapons to the Persians who live in Western China. So that's going to blow up any day now. Okay? And so when that happens, what do you think will happen? Then the Pakistanis will get involved in helping the Muslims, and then the Iranians and the Afghanistanis and the Iraqis will all just be one big soup boiling up, and then they'll say, let's go after Israel too, and then the Israelis will attack them, and then you'll have the Chinese and the Israelis using the same weapons sweeping right across to the middle. And that's what will happen. This will create a global situation, World War III, where everyone will say, all the countries, we have to unite to eliminate this threat. Let's have one world government. Oh, it already exists. Here it is. It's in the United Nations, who is controlled by the 13 families. And that's what's happening right now. Iran just attacked Iraq a few weeks ago. Pakistan and India are fighting. Afghanistan has disappeared practically. Okay? See what's happening. But most Americans have blinders on. They care about if their car payment will be made, if they can buy the house and get that mortgage, if they'll get a promotion in their job, if the gas prices will go down. That's what they don't care about what's going on in the Middle East. They don't care about what Queen Elizabeth does at her ceremonies. They don't care. They won't care about their pockets and their credit, which, by the way, you're going to have soon no cash society. That's being tested out in Finland now. When you go to Finland, you give them all your money, and they give you a card that says what the value is that you could spend in Finland. It's a cashless society, and that's what will be promulgated everywhere else. They will create a global situation that will require as a solution a united government of the world in order to solve the problem.
How does this global warming...
Oh, that's a very good... Yeah, that's a very good point. In 1994, you all remember the String of Pearls comet that struck Jupiter. That was a comet that supposedly broke into 22 pieces and did right-angled turns, turning around Jupiter and striking it in strategic places like comets always do. Okay? Now, I was working at that time at a naval base in Philadelphia, and I was asked at that time to translate from the language of hyperspace archetypes that were being transmitted to the Earth. I think I put that in my Alien Connection book, which I don't know if any of you have read. And at that time, the Earth was being bombarded with archetype symbols, which I talk about in the Healer's Handbook over here. And I was one of the few people that was able to translate this. And that's why I was given that job. What they did was create a situation where Jupiter, which is a gas giant, it's not a solid object, they've heated it up. Whatever was in that comet, or those pieces of mechanisms that they sent in there, are creating Jupiter into being a second sun. And that is heating up the solar system. It is also melting the frozen moons around Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune to make them inhabitable. And in the last year or two, you've seen articles in the newspaper saying that the moons of those planets are like frozen Earths with oceans and maybe life in them. And if they were defrosted, they could be inhabited. It was in the newspaper. Well, that's what they're doing. And the Earth will become part of a binary star system, heated up, and life on Earth will be conducive to reptilian life form. And human beings that are left will be sent to colonize these unfrozen worlds as slave labor. No. And so people say to me, you didn't leave us much hope. Might as well kill myself now. But that's not the answer. The answer is, you are the hope. If you are able to control your own mind pattern and take control of your own victim mentality, then those who control this planet will not have control over you. And if you then teach that to other people, and they teach it to other people, and there's a chain like that, it can reach a critical mass that will spill over to the rest of the population, that will then stop and prevent the occupation and the tyranny from occurring. But if we leave the victim mentality in place, then you will have an oppressor all the time, of one form or another. And that's the answer. There's always hope, but it has to come from you. Contrary to New Age beliefs, there are no benevolent aliens coming to save you. And I always talk about that scene, which is one of my favorite scenes from Independence Day, where all the New Age people are on the roof with their signs saying, "Welcome, Space Brothers." And they're the first ones that got blasted away. That's a message to you. That's a message to you. Okay? Don't welcome someone who's not invited. Yes? You must be the group spokesperson.
I would think it would be very, the major concern we have with the whole planet is the number of guns in the United States.
I'm sorry, can you repeat
The
that?
number of guns that exist in the United States and the hands of the citizens.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be a very, very great concern for them.
That is why they create situations to make people afraid to have handguns out there. That's why they create situations like Littleton, Colorado.
But there are more guns in the United States than there are people.
And that will change. And that will change. Because there will come a time when they will actually do door-to-door searches, because you will have no more rights, and they'll see what you have. And in fact, the United Nations is giving a poll to U.S. soldiers. And some of the questions on the poll is, if you are asked to put on a UN uniform and defend the United Nations, would you do so? If the United Nations commander asked you to shoot an American citizen for not obeying an order, would you do so? And on and on and on like that. And if they answer yes, they will do it, those are the promoted ones. And that's what's going on.
See, the other thing is, as I understand, there are a lot of camps throughout the United States where supposedly UN troops are being...
That's what I was just talking about before.
But they're there to be occupied.
Invade this country.
Yeah.
And the invasion will come generally from Canada. Not by Canadian troops who already are stationed in the U.S., but by Chinese, Russian, and German. It's already in process. In fact, those of you who are knowledgeable of planetary geology and also astronomy, note that since '94, the big red spot in Jupiter is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Because as it heats up, that storm dissipates, and you're going to see Jupiter starting to glow like a golden yellow color. It probably will take until the year 2010 to be completed. Yes?
They're already putting on the entrance to the national parks that they have international biosphere, and now they're putting symbol of the UN.
Yeah. They're designated as United Nations Parks and Recreation Areas. Mm-hmm.
Or mankind, heritage for mankind.
Exactly, but it's under the auspices of the United Nations.
Why is that?
Because there is no United States really anymore.
Independence Hall is also...
Yeah, Independence Hall has been declared an international site. Yes?
Could you comment on the shifting of the Earth's axis and the
Yes.
shifting of the pole?
Yeah, that's really not going to happen. The Earth's axis is not going to shift. The magnetic poles have shifted. And it's now somewhere over northern Canada. The Earth will not flip on its axis. That is a disinformation, so that people will move and there'll be a population shift to rural areas so they can be developed. And that's what's happened. You will not be able to hide anywhere. If you go to northern Canada, top of a mountain, middle of the ocean, it doesn't matter. The Earth is ringed by satellites that can catch a fly on your shoulder. That's how detailed they are. You cannot escape from it. And neither can you fight against it. But you can change it. Thank you very much for coming here tonight. It'll be right here in this room.